This is Don Tanya Batts, and we welcome you back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. We're going to continue our conversation about how to advocate, and also in light of other groups that are in the community who have been organizing, such as the Pastors for Indiana Children. And we have with us Dr. Ramon Batts. And this is going to be an exciting hour because not only are we uplifting the work of Pastors for Indiana Children, but we're also going to be discussing how you can get involved in pushing back of legislation that is just plumb wrong for our community. While we're talking about House Bill 1136, there are also some other bills that need to be on your radar that the community needs to stand up for and fight back against. And it's going to be interesting because we have several guests who are going to be joining the conversation as we talk about these things. Now, if you haven't heard, Pastors for Indiana Children is leading the way alongside the Concerned Clergy of Indianapolis, the Indiana Education Justice Coalition, the Indiana Coalition for Public Education, many individuals, groups, churches, and organizations. So let's work together and make a difference for all children. Let's welcome Dr. Ramon Batts back to the conversation. And I believe we also have Reverend Alexander, our host of Concerned Clergy Radio Show, who is going to be joining the conversation with us today.
Well, good evening.
Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Batts and Sister Batts.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm certainly glad to be with you and glad to know that we have such a great host that can fill in for us on tonight. So I'm just glad to be able to let her just take the reins to the horse, and then I'll just try to be a little part of the conversation as we go forward. And thanks for joining us once again.
Now, Reverend Alexander, you've been involved with the Concerned Clergy alongside the Pastors for Indiana Children. I would love your take on why this is so important to get involved in. And specifically, before we highlight other bills, let's talk about 1136 for a second. That's where we left off in the show.
Well, when we look at House Bill 1136, we certainly see that it is targeted and it is geared towards totally destroying public education as we see it now. And we've looked at, we've heard the rhetoric that's come from like charter operators and those that are pro-charter, and their rhetoric for since the beginning of time is we don't need any government funding. We could do it on our own. We have the money to provide for our students. We can provide them a better education. We don't need anything from, the public education sources whatsoever. But now we're at a point in which they're not only saying that we need those dollars, they're saying we want them and we're willing to be part of a ploy, if you will, to shut the public schools down so that they can get pretty much all of those dollars. I think that's where we're at.
That's interesting. Dr. Batts, again, I'm not really clear on why all this really matters. I mean, aren't the public schools not performing well? And shouldn't they be dismantled? That's some of the arguments that people are saying in the community. Why are we fighting so hard to save public schools?
Well, those arguments are made for any school, and it's been happening, as far as a lot of us can remember. It doesn't take much for someone to be upset with one teacher, one principal, and they throw away the baby with the bathwater. And so there's always room for improvement. One thing that we do know about education, it is in the United States, education is big business. All right, it's one of the growth industries of America, and so you cannot talk about the why without knowing the why. And certainly, like one of my mentors would often say, it ain't about the money, but it's about the money. And so, that's something that we can address later. But this is why this is important for the church and for the pastors, because the church has always led or been out front or spoke truth to power when it comes to social justice issues, especially something like this. This just does not pull at public schools, but it pulls away from the fabric of our economics in our community as well. When you don't have a viable public school system, you have an economic downturn. That economic downturn is not going to be in communities that don't look like Black and brown families. It's going to be with those families that are Black and brown. We're going to have an economic downturn because if education is not happening, right, then you have a minimum amount of space in terms of or where you can work, what you can do, what you're going to be proud of, what your gifts and talents are taking you to. All those things.
You know what's interesting is that economics and education do really go hand in hand, because if you look at communities where public schools have been closed and charter schools have popped up, those neighborhoods are not as desirable to live in as they would be if you were in a public school system such as a Carmel or a Noblesville school. It's interesting, the surrounding neighborhood of successful public schools, quote unquote, and schools that have been intentionally robbed or charterized in communities. Reverend Alexander, can you speak to that a little bit? Why is that? And then also, why is there an overrepresentation of charter schools in lower economic areas? Now, that's not to say that there are not charter schools in other areas, but there's not that oversaturation. You don't see the public school competing with charter schools. Why is that?
Well, the money-making machine is all designed to go after the minority communities. When you look at it, that's where it started, and that's where we are now, where they are going into communities of color, and they're selling they're selling that we can educate your students better. However, that's not true. I mean, you guys mentioned earlier that test scores are proving that. We have many failing charter schools. But when you really look at it, I always like to use an analogy of charter schools now are just like restaurants. They're popping up on every corner, and you know what? You may get, a good group of customers that come in when, it's brand new, but eventually it seems to dwindle down. And then guess what? You start seeing restaurants begin to close. And that's what's happening with charter schools. They're coming in, they're creating a great buzz. However, the buzz doesn't equal the sustainability of what the students need, or even the longevity of a school being there for even a decade. I've showed statistics that show that now charter schools are closing with about 3.5 years. The average charter school that's opening, the new one, they're closing in about 3.5 years. We've had over 30 charter schools that have opened and closed over the last 20 years. Those closures cause disruptions in our families, in our students' lives. And some of them are in the middle of the year, and it's hard to recover from that.
That's something that Dr. Batts raised up a little earlier, is that it's interesting how these schools, the schools that are supposed to be better than the public schools are in essence not performing much better. And here we are making a push to share resources for something that's not a better product. And additionally, you have these schools that aren't sustainable on their own because, as you said, both of you have said, is that these charter schools came on the scene and they were supposed to be, A, innovative, B, be able to sustain themselves economically, meaning they shouldn't need our tax dollars or to share referendum dollars with public schools who don't have the multiple resources of funding that charter schools do, namely the federal government, namely individual corporations, and other nonprofits designed for the sustainability of charter schools. So why must the work that public schools do and the charter schools don't have to help with the raising of referendum dollars through promotion and marketing, et cetera, but they are entitled to money that the public school raised, and in essence, putting them out of business, so to speak? It just doesn't make sense. And how is this better for our kids?
Let me address that, Sister Tanya, a couple of ways. So when you talk about money and our community, certainly when dollars are there and available for someone to work, to take care of their families, they're going to do that. The problem is that when these systems come into play, that when it comes to the destruction of our community, they always use us to do it, because we jump at things that are new, because we get tired of being beat down in other places, and I can run my own school. I can be in charge of this. I can now get this title, or I can do this, and I can go around this system to get this done, right? And so we always jump at that. And what this is about is, so even when they get those tax dollars, right, that money does not stay in Indianapolis. It does not circulate in our city. It doesn't circulate in our schools, in our counties. It leaves our city because these charter operators are not from Indianapolis, all right, or from Gary or Elkhart or Evans. They're not from here. They're not from Indiana. So the tax dollars leave. They go to Wisconsin and Arkansas and California, right? And this seems to be a systemic problem, not just education, but look at the argument being made of all the people who are owning homes in our state, in our city, and are renting them out, and they don't live here at all. And so this is draining. We just don't have a brain drain. We have a money drain in our city, and it's being ciphered off piece by piece. And so this is a systematic thing that's going. And so when you have people like Leroy Robinson and Maggie Lewis who are signing on to bills or signing on to letters and calling for the disruption of the education of our children in our city, it proves the fact that they always use us to get after us and to make it look like it's something that we should be doing, right? And we have to become more mindful of that. That's where this comes in terms of the church, the pastors, because in terms of speaking truth to power, because we have to educate and inform the community at all costs, and host like we're doing tomorrow, host these meetings and distribute fact sheets, use social media, collaborate with legal experts to break down complex policies like we're doing tomorrow. This is so that we can build a unified coalition, because it's time out for everybody going different directions and beholding to their titles and other things. Pastor Green and Pastor Moore have been working together. Pastor Bacon, the Foresight Alliance, are all coming on board, and we're looking to bring the state organizations together as well. This bill will impact all of our communities, and eventually, if they're not paying attention, the rural communities will be impacted as well. But this is nothing about how many students are in a school. This has to do with how much money now can we continue to cipher away from Indianapolis Public Schools, from Gary Public Schools, or Elkhart Public Schools, or whatever public school system where there are a number of black and brown children.
Well, hey, Dr. Batts, can I kind of jump in there, because I mean, I hear, I hear the passion, and I want our listeners to have that same passion and understand where that comes from. Because what Dr. Batts is sharing, the disruption, in 1136 says if there's a failing public school, IPS school right now, that it will close and those students will have to go to a charter school. Now, the premise of charters is so you have school choice. What they are doing is eliminating a choice if they say, well, we're going to close that IPS school, and then you only have one choice, and that is charters. But what the passion that comes from Dr. Batts is because he understands that if we don't have a good, solid IPS school system, it's going to affect everyone's family, not just in IPS, but also in these other townships, whether it be Pike, Washington, Wayne. It's going to affect those because guess what? Your township could be next. The law says that they just have to get a certain percentage, that 50%, 51%. And then if those students are not attending public schools in your district, then you are a target right there. That's why it's important for us to understand it, because it's not just affecting IPS. That's what Dr. Batts is trying to help us get.
So that's a really good point, because as IPS goes, so do all the other townships and traditional public schools go as well. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to join Pastor Green to the conversation. And then we're also going to deep dive into what can you do? Because 1136 is not the only bill that the community needs to be on the lookout for. There's some other ones that impact us. And it's time out for us to say that my kid doesn't go to that school district or that school district, because the reality is your school district could be next. Let's take a quick break. I'm your host, Dontanya Batts, and we'll be right back.
To the Get Up Church. Best day ever! On the next Get Up Mornings with Erica Campbell.
Hey, what's cracking, y'all? It's Griff from Get Up Mornings with Erica Campbell. There she go.
Hey, listen, join us tomorrow. The amazing Kiara Sheard Kelly will join us right here at the Get Up Church.
Come on, and Erica have her faith walk, her love talk. I'll have joys and concerns, and Shirley have trending topics.
Guys, make sure you pray for the victims in California, all right?
Yes.
We'll be faith walking,
love talking,
and joy living on Get Up Mornings.
Yeah.
On Praise AM 1310 and 95.1 FM Indies Inspiration Station.
It's not uncommon for us to meet with a new client, and the first thing they say is, "We heard you on the radio."
How can a partnership with Praise Indy serve your business?
Hi, my name's Richard Michaelis. Our firm's Michaelis Corporation. We're general contractors, and we specialize in insurance restoration.
Brand awareness.
When our business needed to increase our brand awareness, we looked to Radio 1. Throughout the years, we learned their listeners have a large amount of trust when it comes to businesses that are recommended on air. The on-air talent that endorse Michaelis are real customers with real experiences.
Deliver your message to the audience that matters.
Working with Radio 1 has created brand awareness for Michaelis Corporation.
Take your advertising to the next level. Text business to 71007 now.
We've enjoyed our partnership with Radio 1. We look forward to continuing for many years to come.
Get results with Praise Indy.
Hey everybody, I'm Michael Strahan, and I've been a part of the St. Jude family for years. My 18-year-old daughter was diagnosed with medulloblastoma, a brain tumor. Well, thankfully, she is now in remission. Although she chose to be treated closer to her twin sister, my support for St. Jude remains as strong as ever, because St. Jude's groundbreaking research in medulloblastoma has helped pediatric hospitals everywhere. This holiday season, join our St. Jude family. Donate now at musicgives.org.
Welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. This is Dontanya Batts, and I'm here talking with a representative from Pastors for Indiana Children, Dr. Ramon Batts, and a representative from the Concerned Clergy, Reverend Tony Alexander. And we have been engaged in a diligent conversation about House Bill 1136 and other bills that we will share later on in the program that you need to be aware of.
Sister Bats?
But we're going to spend the... I'm sorry?
Sister Bats, I also want to let you know that Pastor Green has joined us. So he just got in just before our break. So the president of the Concerned Clergy is with us as well. So he was able to make it in.
Pastor Green. Yes. Welcome to the show. We're diligently talking about what can we do next. We got these House bills going on. We have a long legislative session, and things just aren't right for Black and brown communities. And it seems like the more we do, the more we vote, we get bills that come on the scene, such as this. What do you say about that, Pastor Green?
Well, that's a heavy question, Dr. Ms. Batts, that you started me out with. I think that a piece of it, you've been talking about this panel discussion on tomorrow night. I think those are the type of events that community need to engage so they have the facts regarding information. And with facts, you can ask better questions rather than assume some things. And then hopefully, we're going to have to take a more active role and less of a passive role in terms of all the way down to, obviously it involves voting, but holding people accountable, our legislators, et cetera, and asking more challenging questions of people as opposed to just letting them get a free pass. There's a number of things happening, but we have to take a more active role. Because it is about in terms of education, it's about our children. And then, there's, as you know, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion bills that are out there. Medicare, who knows how that's going to work out in terms of just healthcare for our disenfranchised communities. There's a number of things, starting with this education piece. You need the facts, though. I mean, because there's obviously other messages out there saying, okay, all you need is this, and it's gonna fix everything. It has been fixing everything, but the data doesn't reveal that. But you need to know that. You won't know that unless you expose yourself to information that says, oh, okay, and then we can begin to hold people accountable.
It's interesting you say that we need to get more active. So, and you mentioned that we can ask questions. To whom are we asking questions? I don't think people realize that you can actually call your elected official and put them to task and share information. They work for the community. And another thing that was mentioned by Pastor Green is the fact that there is an event that's happening tomorrow that requires the community to be there to learn more about what is happening in public education and the implications. Even if you don't send your child to a public school, there are implications for everyone in the community. Pastor Batts, can you share with us about what is happening, when, and where tomorrow night?
Yeah, so tomorrow night we're going to be at Olivet Baptist Church beginning at 6 p.m. And it's going to be information that's being shared by 4 panelists. And essentially, one of the things for me personally is I'm after our pastors in the city, around the state, that we become more active and informed. And so I'm praying that those pastors show up. So if anyone's listening, make sure that your pastor is aware. He should be in the house tomorrow to help facilitate what's going to be coming down for his membership. And so that's essentially what we'll be doing tomorrow, sharing that information, and letting everyone know that we're looking to save public education. But the other part of that is that we want to address this charter school myth that charter schools are better than public schools. All right, not that charter schools are bad, but we want to address this myth that charter schools are better. And so we'll have the correct data to give out so people can understand. This is not emotional for us at all. This is about facts. This is about research that has been going on for 20 years or so. And so, and we can see what's happening in our community. And so, so please, you know, the naysayers are going to, you know, they just mad that this, they just, no, we're not mad, but we are extremely disappointed in what's happening in our community, and that our voices are not being heard throughout the community.
So that event is called Saving Public Education. It will be at 6 p.m. tomorrow at Olivet Missionary Baptist Church at 4141 North High School Road. Reverend Alexander and Pastor Green, if you both could speak to an advocacy strategy that the Concerned Clergy uses very well, and that is organizing and mobilizing stakeholders to speak up, take action, and advocate for change. How can someone who is not a part of the clergy get involved in organizing and mobilizing that you do as an organization?
Again, that's a multifaceted question, Ms. Batts. What we try to do is we understand that you can't do this by yourself. This event that's being held tomorrow, what is that? That is a coalition. That's not, you know, one group doing it. It's a coalition of people coming together, pastors for, you know, for Indiana. We got a number of groups that are part of this because we know the fight and struggle that we face. It can't be about one person. It's about multiple coalitions that are like-minded regarding an issue. And so we do a lot of work in coalitions and building the coalition, working together. We're happy to have, you know, Mr. Batts, Dr. Batts tomorrow on that panel, but we also got Pat Payne, we got Dr. Shurick from IU, and, you know, we were able to get Senator Kadora, who's on the Education Committee on the Senate side. So we just try to bring information, but work in a collaborative fashion, and anybody can be a part of it. I mean, you know, but whether you're a citizen, I mean, this is open communication for community come all. I mean, while Dr. Bass, certainly we are going to challenge our pastors to be leaders and why it's important and they need to have the information, we still want the community to come and know that everybody's going to be a part of, because we're not going to be successful without the like-minded people coming together. It's being divided that allows a lot of this to happen. So we have to come together. That doesn't mean everybody's going to agree, because obviously there are people who are very much believing that charter school itself is the answer. And then there are those of us who will be like, well, you know, we're not, quote unquote, just slamming all charter schools, but we know that that's not the answer across the board, because, you know, the other cities, et cetera, the New Orleanses of the world who've gone down that path are going back to public schools. So rather than continue to be a part of an experiment, we're saying, hold it. What's right for our children? And just being anti-public school is not the solution. And the data points that out. You know, that's not personal. That's not, you know, just being upset and mad about something. That's not the solution. We clearly do want a solution for our children. This is what it's all about. We want people to have the facts, though, so we can raise the right questions and go about this in a way that helps all our children, black and brown, you know, and not just be like, well, there's an experiment going on and we're losing children, losing communities. That's not a solution.
You know, if I could kind of add to that, as you're, you know, talking about, you know, your community collaborations, you know, there used to be a time in which you could take like the teachers union, ISTA, and they could speak up about the harm that it's doing to our education system, the harm that it's doing to our teachers, our educators, how we're losing those educators that have been there for a long time, and now you're seeing where the teachers are for these charter schools, they're not even part of the union. They don't even have the credentials that, the other teachers have. It used to be their voice. You could hear their voice and people would listen to that. And it's become so politicized now, where even the voices of those whose hands we're really putting our young people in, that's being ignored, all for political gain. And, what else we're going to lose, and what parents should understand, things such as transportation. You want to be able to know, hey, my son or my daughter, they're going to go get on a bus same time every day, and it's going to be consistent. Well, you're not going to have consistent transportation. You're going to have to work out, grandma or grandpa, who's going to help get my student to school? Are they going to have to ride Indigo? Well, charter schools don't have resources for special needs. Those are some other items that we need to look at. And we have a lot of children that are dealing with traumatic situations, dealing with special needs, mental. They need some special, help just in regards to what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And charter schools are not equipped for that.
That's true. And it's really interesting how this big charter push is being imposed on the community, because we're talking about choice. But what we really want is to maintain our voice by having democratically elected school boards, which charter schools don't have. Don't take away the choice of our public schools that we so hold near and dear to our hearts. Now, the one thing that I love about the Concerned Clergy is how they build the public awareness and invite organizations to come together to stand. Before we recess tonight, I really want to lift up other bills that we need to have on our radar, such as House Bill 1230. That means that they're looking to bring back, this was on the chart for last legislative session, and it's making school board elections partisan, which means that in order to run for a school board, that they want people to declare whether or not they're a Republican or a Democrat. Currently, school board elections are nonpartisan, and we want to maintain that non-declaration or that nonpartisan way of school board elections. Another House bill is House Bill 1231, which would make the 10 Commandments a requirement in public classrooms. House Bill 1368 would make public schools share referenda dollars with charter schools. We talked about that a little bit earlier today. So the public tax dollars that public schools are raising to meet the gaps that our state officials refuse to fully fund public schools, they essentially ask the community to help fundraise for them. That's what a referenda is. And when it's approved, charter schools who had nothing to do with raising of those funds or contributing to how those funds were raised are now asking to take away or share in that money that public schools are working to raise to meet their funding gaps. One more bill I like to raise up before I get some comment from our guests today, and that is House Bill 1501. And this means that what they're trying to do is remove local control over public school property, especially buses. Multiple times, the Concerned Clergy and Pastors for Indiana Children have raised up the issue that charter schools are essentially getting free transportation from our public schools. Like, for instance, an IPS school would be required to provide buses for a charter school. And also, we know charter schools can acquire property for $1 if they're not being utilized by the public schools. And this is just 4 of about 10 alarming education bills that are up on our floors in our legislative halls. Any comments about any one or any of these bills, or what we need to keep our eye on as a community?
I'll say that I find it. No, go ahead, Dr. Bass. Then I'll go.
No, go ahead, Pastor Green.
I'll just say that I find it egregious. I got a lot of gray hair now. So I was around when They said, we won't need your money. Just let us do our charter schools. And now they're coming to get the money that they said they did not need when they started it. Because if the public school gives up transportation dollars, facility dollars, referendum dollars, I mean, you're just, the charter school is just taking money from an organization and saying, we want your money. And that's resources that won't be available to public school children. They should be responsible for their own. That's how it started. Initially, they said, we won't need it. Let us do our charter school. We're not going to need your money. And now in 2025, they're over here taking money on every side, if you will. They want your transportation dollars, your facility dollars, your referendum dollars. And we don't want to invest any money in getting it. We just want to give it to us. And that's that's gangster stuff right there. Gangsters. That's some real gangster stuff.
Dr. Batts, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, I would say one of the things that that I think that Pastor Bacon of the Foresight Alliance brought to my attention was Article 8 that has to do with education. And in Section 2 of that, it talks about the Common School Fund that shall consist of the Congressional Township Fund and lands belong thereto. All those things are in there. Essentially, what Article 8 is saying, that what they are trying to do in terms of defunding public schools goes against the Constitution. And that's
the Indiana Constitution, correct?
That's the Indiana Constitution, yes. So, we have to be, we definitely have to be informed, and we definitely have to continue to fight and push back. And also, and we have to take off the gloves and stop playing nice when we have people in our own community, Trojan horses, who are smiling in our face and all the time put knives in our backs. That has to end so that we can progress and move forward. There's no way that we continue to allow those that look like us to mess us up, so to speak, as we're trying to move forward and progress. And they're trying to make side deals and get money in their pockets or get new jobs or whatever it is they're trying to do. But it's hurting our community, and we have to call them out and call them to the carpet. And then we also need to make sure that they're not elected any longer as we expose them as well. And so these are things I think that are doable in our community as soon as people are informed. And so there's no better body than I can think of to do that than the church. Baptist Church, Catholic Church, Methodist Church, African Episcopal Church, whatever church it might be. The church should be leading the charge in making sure that our community is informed. And so in doing that, the pastors need to make sure they're informed.
Pastor Alexander, do you have a comment?
Well, I just kind of want to reiterate what Dr. Batts just said. And I want, once again, folks to understand, the comments he's making. He's sharing that there are folks that look like us and are helping to destroy us. When you look at all the legislation that's being proposed, none of it is really, I'll say, being authored by anybody that's in the affected areas. It's all being authored by others that are not necessarily part of the affected areas. And then we have here in Pike Township, which Dr. Batts has mentioned a few times, that we had Pike Township city county councilors that came out and they pretty much put IPS on notice that you need to get yourselves together or else. And the or else is, here's what we're going to do. We're going to allow you to fall to charter schools. And I think that is detrimental. And when Dr. Batts, speaks to the elected officials, what it is we need to do, want to say those are some you really need to look at. He mentioned, are they going to get reelected? Well, that's something we really need to consider if this does go through and if they don't change their tune.
Listen, it's time for our community to wake up, not only with our ballot, but also with our feet. And there are 3 calls to action that I want to lift up. And that is, 1, we need to call to task, actually have conversations with our elected officials. If we are going to continue to elect individuals who are representing things that are against our best interests, and I'm not talking about individual interests, because those of us who have individual interests generally and have the means to be able to make those interests come to fruition aren't really impacted. But I'm talking about Black and brown families, white families who don't have the means, and the public school is the only institution where they are able to get some of the resources they need in order to have a chance at an equitable, just future. And that means inviting policymakers to your church, to your school, to your home. Have a kitchen table conversation with the policymaker. And then ask them the question, why is this happening? Provide them with information to be able to make better decisions. And then participate in community events like the one happening tomorrow at Olivet Missionary Baptist Church, where there is a coalition of individuals that include the Concerned Clergy, Pastors for Indiana Children, the Indiana Education Justice Coalition, the Indiana Coalition for Public Education. People are coming together, and we need to see the diversity of representation that we see in these institutions, in the public schools. We need to see, bottom line, we need to see Black and brown faces showing up to the State House. Because right now I have white parents begging for participation from African American individuals to stand up and help fight. Any last words before we wrap up?
I just want to say, don't be fooled by the term choice. I ain't against choice. I just want you to make sure every parent got good choices, not be confined to where you got a choice, all right, but you're choosing between bad options. That's not choice in my mind. Choice is when you've got good options to select from. That means we're going to need good public schools that are fully funded, that can serve our needs of our children, not wipe them out or take them out. And if they give up their facility, they give up transportation, they give up referendum dollars, they will not exist. One is either you're going to put a bullet in their head or they're going to die by 1,000 cuts. Either way, they're dead, and we need to stand up to say we don't want that to happen, in my opinion.
And one more thing I would say, Sister Baptist, is before we go, don't be fooled about these public schools and think that those children in those schools aren't getting educated. Every year, there are graduates from Indianapolis Public Schools or Gary School, wherever they are, who are going to West Point and Harvard, who are going to Yale, who are going to Howard, who are going to Morehouse and Spelman. Every year, they're graduating and getting into those schools, and they are thriving and graduating once they get there. So don't believe the hype, because you may have one person who's upset about something telling you that the whole school system is bad. That is not true.
Reverend Alexander?
Well, I'll just end with this. Just a reminder for the event on tomorrow. So once again, it's a citywide faith-based initiative entitled Saving Public Education and Addressing the Charter School Myth. And you're going to have some great panelists there. We're going to have Dr. Patrice Payne, Dr. Batts, as he's on tonight as well, Dr. Jim Shurk, and Senator Fatty Kador is going to be there, and they're going to be sharing them. You've already heard from Dr. Batts. He's got a lot more he wants to make sure the community is aware of. So that is tomorrow at the Olivet Missionary Baptist Church, 4141 North High School Road in Indianapolis, and that begins at 6 p.m. That's where Dr. Wayne Moore is the host pastor. So I just want to, once again, invite folks to come out. Get the information, and not just soak in the information, but that coalition piece, it's one by one. It's each one of us sharing it as well. Thank you, Sister Bax.
That's right.
And Mr. Bax, before you go, let me add, everybody better be concerned about this, because this is going to be a state law. So this is not an IPS only issue. This is going to be townships, etc. Because if he passes this is going to be public schools. So we need to be in tune that this is not just IPS. This is public schools. Your township schools are not exempt in this law. And we will be set up to be next.
That's right. Well, an hour is just not enough with 3 heavy hitters. Tonight, I've been talking to Dr. Ramon Bax of Pastors for Indiana Children, Reverend Pastor Green, the president of the Concerned Clergy, and Reverend Alexander, also of the Concerned Clergy. These gentlemen know what they're talking about, and it's time for the community to stand with them. That's all for tonight on the Concerned Clergy Radio Hour. Thank you for tuning in and for caring about the future of our children and community. Pastor Green has already said this is not just an IPS issue. This will be House Bill 1136 will become state law, and if it dies on the House floor, it will be resurrected in some language attached to another bill. So we must be diligent. Remember, advocacy begins with you, your voice, your actions, your commitment to justice. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful. This has been Don Tanya Bax, signing off, and good night.